I didn't expect her voice to cut straight through me the way it did. "Do you trust me?" she asked. And I don't know why, but the answer left my lips before I could think. "With everything." That was how it started, before the night even really began. It was supposed to be a simple thing. I'd noticed the light flickering in her kitchen window for weeks, the way the bulbs stuttered like a bad heartbeat. Tonight, as I walked back from the corner store with 2 plastic bags biting into my hands, I caught her outside by the porch, staring up at that window like it was mocking her. She wasn't like the other neighbors. She carried herself differently, slower, deliberate, like every step mattered. Maybe late 40s, maybe younger, it was hard to place. Her hair was tied up, loose strands falling over her face, and the porch light painted her skin in this soft gold that made her look untouchable. "Damn thing keeps cutting out," she muttered, more to herself than to me. I should have kept walking. Instead, I stopped. "It might just be the wiring. I can take a look if you want." She turned, surprised, like she hadn't realized anyone was listening. Her eyes lingered on me a second longer than felt normal. "You know anything about wiring?" "Not officially," I admitted, shifting the grocery bag. "But I've fixed worse." Something in her softened, barely, but enough. She sighed, then pushed open the door. "All right, but if I smell burning, you're responsible." Inside, her house was quieter than mine. Too quiet. No TV hum, no music. Just the sound of the floorboards under our feet. I set my bags on the counter and glanced around. Everything was neat, careful, but lived in. The kind of place someone keeps when they don't expect many visitors. She handed me a small step stool, and I climbed up to reach the bulb. My hands moved automatically, unscrewing, checking the fixture, twisting wires together. She stood just close enough that I felt the weight of her presence. "You always this helpful to strangers?" she asked. I laughed under my breath. "You're not really a stranger. Just someone I haven't talked to yet." She didn't answer right away. When I glanced down, her gaze was fixed on me, unreadable. I had to look away first. The light flickered back to life, bright enough that both of us squinted. I climbed down, brushing dust off my palms. "Should hold at least for a while." She tilted her head. "So what do I owe you?" "Nothing," I said quickly. "I was just—" "Then let me at least make you some tea," she interrupted, already moving toward the stove. Her tone was casual, but there was something underneath, something I couldn't name yet. I almost told her no. Almost. But then I saw the way her shoulders relaxed just slightly at the thought of company, and I couldn't bring myself to leave. We sat across from each other at her small kitchen table, steam curling from mismatched mugs. The silence between us wasn't empty. It was sharp, charged. She asked me questions, where I worked, how long I'd lived here, and I gave answers that felt too short, like I was trying not to say too much. She didn't push. She just studied me the way people do when they're searching for something familiar in someone new. At one point, her hand brushed against mine on the table. Could have been an accident. But she didn't pull away right away. Neither did I. That was when she leaned back, eyes holding mine steady, and asked, quiet, almost daring, "Do you trust me?" My throat tightened. I should have laughed it off or asked why. But I didn't. I just whispered the truth. With everything. And in that moment, I realized leaving her house was no longer an option. I should have left after the light was fixed. After the tea. After that question that shouldn't have been asked at all. But I didn't. Maybe it was because of the way she held her mug with both hands, as though she needed the warmth more than the taste. Or the way she'd glance at the window every so often, like she expected something, or someone, to be standing outside. Her name was Elena. She only offered it after a long pause, as though deciding whether to trust me with it. I told her mine, and for a while, the only sound between us was the faint hiss of the kettle cooling. "You live alone?" I asked before I could stop myself. Her eyes flickered to mine, sharp for just a second. Then softer. "Yes," She set her cup down carefully, too carefully, like the porcelain might shatter. Used to be different. But now, yes. I didn't ask the next question, the one that burned at the edge of my tongue. Used to be different how? Instead, I nodded, though my chest tightened. That was when I noticed her hands. She wasn't wearing a ring, but there was a faint, pale line where one had been for years. She caught me noticing and slid her hands under the table. Cleared my throat. The wiring wasn't too bad. You should be fine for a while. But, if anything else breaks, you'll come by? She finished for me. There was a tiny lift at the corner of her mouth, but it wasn't quite a smile. More like a test. I felt my ears warm. If you want. Silence stretched again. Too long. I hated how much I wanted to fill it. I looked at her and saw details I shouldn't have been paying attention to. The way the porch light had left a soft glow on her collarbone earlier, the faint crease at the corner of her eye when she squinted, the way she always seemed to breathe like she was trying to steady herself. She was older. She'd lived through things I couldn't even guess at. And here I was, 20-something, staring like I had any right to. Dangerous, I muttered under my breath. I hadn't meant to say it out loud. Her head tilted. What is? I swallowed. Nothing. Just the wiring. Old houses, you know? For a heartbeat I thought she'd press. But she didn't. She just leaned back, studying me in that way that made my skin buzz. You're honest, she said finally. I almost laughed. I'm not sure about that. You are, she insisted quietly. You say what you mean, even when you don't want to. Not many people do. Her words lodged in me, heavier than they should have. I tried to look away, but then her hand reached across the table, resting lightly against my arm. Not gripping, not pulling, just there. Enough to stop me from pretending I wasn't trembling. You don't have to go yet, she said. The steam from her mug had long faded, but the air between us burned hotter than ever. I told myself I wouldn't stay long. Just one more cup of tea, a little more conversation, then I'd leave before it got complicated. But the longer I sat there, the harder it became to imagine walking out that door. Elena leaned her chin against her palm, watching me with an ease I couldn't return. Every time her eyes lingered, I had to fight the urge to look anywhere but at her. The silence wasn't uncomfortable. It was something worse. It was heavy, like the air itself knew we were both pretending not to feel what was happening. At one point, she laughed at something I said, something small, unimportant, and the sound startled me. Not because it was too loud, but because it was warm, alive, like she hadn't used it in a long time. Sorry, she murmured, tucking a strand of hair behind her ear. I don't laugh much these days. That admission sat between us like an open wound. I wanted to ask why, to know what had drained laughter out of her life. Instead, I said, too quickly, you should. Her gaze softened, and I hated how much it made me want to reach across the table. Before I could think of something else, anything else, the sudden trill of her phone cut through the room. She flinched, glancing at the screen. The name lit up, and her jaw tightened. You can answer, I said, though my chest ached with the words. She let it ring. When the sound finally died, she exhaled slowly. Some things are better left unanswered. I nodded, though the truth was I wanted to know who it was. Ex maybe, or someone who still thought they had a claim on her. I clenched my fist under the table. I should go, I muttered, standing too fast. Her eyes followed me, steady, unblinking. If that's what you want. It wasn't. God, it wasn't. But leaving felt safer than sitting here under her gaze, pretending I wasn't drowning in it. I took a step toward the door. My shoulder brushed hers as I passed, and the contact froze me. Just the barest touch, but enough to feel the heat of her skin through the fabric. Neither of us moved. She turned her head slightly, so close I could see the faint line of a scar just beneath her jaw, a detail no one would notice unless they were this close. My throat tightened. Elena? Her name slipped out before I could stop it, softer than I meant, weighted with everything I wasn't supposed to say. Her lips parted, as though she might answer. But then another knock broke the air. Sharp, impatient. We both jumped back, the spell fractured. She straightened, smoothing her shirt with shaking hands. "It's late," she whispered, though her eyes never left mine. The knock came again, harder this time. I stood frozen in the doorway of her kitchen, torn between leaving, staying, and crossing a line I couldn't uncross. The knocking stopped as suddenly as it began. A car door slammed outside, footsteps fading into the night. Whoever it was had given up, or decided we weren't worth waiting for. But the damage was done. The air between us had changed. Elena lingered by the doorway, her hand still resting on the wood as though she expected it to split open again. I stood a few feet away, uncertain, restless. The silence swelled, thicker than before, until I couldn't take it anymore. "You didn't answer the phone," I said quietly. And now this, whoever that was. Her shoulders tensed. "Not everything needs explaining." "Maybe not," I admitted. "But you look like you're carrying too much." And I stopped myself. My heart was racing. "I don't like watching you do that alone." She turned then, sharply, her eyes catching mine. "You shouldn't be watching me at all. That should have been enough to end it. To send me out the door, to remind me of all the lines between us. Age, history, the unspoken rules of neighbors and strangers who weren't meant to matter to each other. But instead, I stepped closer. "I can't help it," I whispered. The words slipped out, too raw, too unpolished. They landed between us like an open wound, impossible to take back. Her breath caught. For the first time since I'd met her, Elena looked unguarded. Not composed, not careful, just human. Her lips parted like she might say something, but the words never came. I should have left then. God knows I should have. Instead, my hand brushed hers again, this time deliberate. My pulse hammered in my ears, louder than the clock ticking on her wall. "Elena," I said, her name rough in my throat. "If this is wrong, you have to tell me now." Her eyes searched mine, frantic, as if looking for a reason to push me away. But then, so quietly I almost missed it, she said, "Nothing about this feels wrong." The room tilted, my chest clenched. Every reason I'd had to leave, to pretend, cracked apart in that single admission. I leaned closer without thinking, without permission. The space between us shrank until her breath mingled with mine. For a heartbeat, the world stilled. The hum of the refrigerator, the faint creak of floorboards, even the air itself. Her hand trembled against the edge of the counter. Mine hovered, waiting. Then she whispered, almost broken, "You're too young for this." For me. I froze. The truth of it hung there, undeniable. But I couldn't make myself step back. Not when her eyes told a different story. We stood there, suspended between the past she carried and the future I didn't yet understand. Silence pressing against us like a question neither of us knew how to answer. And then she asked, voice low, trembling, "What happens if we don't stop?" The kitchen went silent. My heart did not. Her question, "What happens if we don't stop?" hung in the air, unanswerable. I opened my mouth, but before I could speak, her phone lit up again. This time she didn't silence it. She glanced at the screen, froze, then turned it face down on the counter. Too late, I'd seen the name. Daniel. My breath caught. I knew that name. She noticed. Her lips parted, but no sound came. I stepped back, heart pounding. "That's my brother." The silence that followed was louder than the ring had been. Elena's face drained of color. She pressed a hand to her forehead like the room itself had tilted. "I didn't know," she whispered. "I swear I didn't know." The ground beneath me seemed to split. Memories reeled. Family dinners where Daniel always disappeared to take calls. The months he'd been distant, distracted. He'd mentioned someone once, someone older, but I hadn't pressed. I hadn't expected it to be her. Tell me this isn't. My voice cracked. I couldn't finish the sentence. Her eyes glistened, though no tears fell. It was never serious. Not the way you think. He wanted, but I couldn't give him what he wanted. She gripped the counter edge like it was the only thing holding her up. And then he stopped calling. Months ago. I thought it was over. I backed away, palms burning. So I'm just what? Filling the space he left. Her expression broke at that, like the words had cut deeper than I intended. No. God, no. You're not him. The truth of her voice, the desperation in it, should have reassured me. But instead it twisted something inside me tighter. Because she was right. I wasn't him. I was the brother he didn't even know was here tonight, in this kitchen, on the verge of something neither of us could undo. Elena. My voice was hoarse, my chest aching. This is. I know. She closed her eyes. It's impossible. But when she opened them again, they locked onto mine, unflinching. And yet you're still standing here. I swallowed hard, torn between walking out the door and reaching for her again. Every instinct screamed at me to stop, but my body wouldn't move. The phone buzzed once more against the counter. Neither of us looked at it this time. Instead, Elena stepped closer, close enough that I could smell the faint citrus of her perfume, close enough that the heat of her presence drowned out everything else. I never should have let you in, she whispered. But I don't want you to leave. Her confession hit harder than the name on the screen. For a long, fragile second, I forgot Daniel, forgot consequences, forgot everything but her eyes holding mine. And then the phone went silent. The kitchen was drowned in stillness, and I knew whatever choice I made next would change everything. The silence after the last buzz of her phone felt endless, like the whole house was holding its breath. I stood there, every part of me pulled in two directions, toward the door and toward her. Finally, I forced the words out. He's my brother, Elena. This can't. My throat tightened. This can't be anything. Her eyes searched mine, steady, unwavering. And yet it already is. That undid me. I turned away, pressing my palms against the counter. The cool surface grounded me, but only just. He'll never forgive me. If he ever finds out. Do you always live for his forgiveness? She asked softly. The question landed like a stone in water, ripples spreading through every thought I'd been clinging to. I shook my head, but the answer didn't feel honest. Daniel had always been the golden one, the one I trailed behind, measuring myself against his shadow. And now here I was, betraying him in the one way that couldn't be taken back. Elena, I whispered, still not facing her. I don't want to ruin you. Her laugh was quiet, bitter, but not unkind. Too late for that. I ruined myself a long time ago. That pulled me back to her. I turned, and she looked smaller than I'd ever seen. Shoulders drawn, eyes tired, as if she was bracing for me to walk away. I stepped closer, slow, like every inch was dangerous ground. Tell me the truth, I said. If I stay, what happens to us? She held my gaze unblinking. We carry it. Every consequence, every scar. We don't pretend it's simple. We just carry it together. The honesty of it gutted me. She wasn't promising happy endings, wasn't painting over the mess. She was offering something harder, something real. And in that moment I knew. I couldn't leave her. Not tonight. Maybe not ever. My hand found hers, shaking, tentative. She let me hold it, and her fingers curled slowly, deliberately, around mine. I leaned forward, close enough that our foreheads almost touched, close enough that the world outside her walls no longer existed. Then I'm not walking away. Her breath caught, and for the first time, she didn't try to stop me. She didn't remind me of Daniel or the rules we were breaking. She just closed her eyes, leaned into the space between us, and whispered, "Then don't." The weight of every secret, every risk, pressed down on us in that fragile closeness. And somehow it didn't feel unbearable. It felt like the only thing that was ours. When I finally pulled back, her eyes were wet, shining. Not from sadness, something else. Something neither of us dared name. We stood in the quiet, hands still linked, and I realized the choice had already been made. There was no going back. By the time I finally left her house, the night had gone quiet. No cars on the street, no porch lights glowing but hers. I paused on her front step, the cool air hitting my face like a reminder of the world waiting outside. Inside, she lingered by the doorway, her hand pressed lightly against the frame as though holding herself upright. Neither of us had said goodbye. Not really, because goodbye wasn't what this was. I thought about Daniel, about the way his name on her phone had shifted everything. But the truth was clearer now than it had ever been. What passed between them was a shadow, nothing more. Whatever this was, whatever we were, wasn't his to own. And yet, guilt would always trail me. That much I understood. Choices don't come without weight. But neither does love. When I turned back to her, Elena's eyes met mine with the same steady intensity they had since the first moment. But there was something different now, something softer. Not the guarded woman who stood on her porch under a broken light, but someone willing, finally, to be seen. "You don't owe me promises," she said quietly. I shook my head. "Not promises, just the truth." She tilted her head, curious. "And the truth is? That I'm not going anywhere. Not tonight. Not tomorrow." The words came out without hesitation, and for once, I didn't second-guess them. Her lips parted like she wanted to argue, to tell me all the reasons we'd fall apart. But then she smiled, small, tired, but real. It was the kind of smile that said she knew life rarely gave people the luxury of certainty, but tonight she'd take it anyway. We didn't kiss, not then. We didn't need to. The way her hand found mine again was enough. Two people holding on, not because it was simple, but because it was real. When I finally stepped off her porch, I knew nothing outside those walls had changed. Daniel still existed. The world would still judge. We would still carry every risk, every scar. But inside those walls, something had shifted. I had seen her, really seen her, and she had let me. That was enough to make the weight worth carrying. As I walked back toward my own place, grocery bags still abandoned on her counter, I realized the story I just stepped into wasn't the kind people read in books or watch in movies. It was messier than that, heavier. But it was ours. And that made it beautiful.